tree. I love me sweet Belize, sweet Belize, land of the Isles and Keys, land of the Barrier Reef. I love me sweet Belize. If I ever had to leave Belize, if I ever had to leave Belize, where would I go? Where would I go? Where would I spread my bed? Where would I lay my head? Nobody know, nobody know. If I ever had to leave me home, no other place I ever roam could be like Belize, be like Belize. Sweet Belize, land of the sand and sea, land of the coconut tree. I love me sweet Belize, sweet Belize, land of the Isles and Keys, land of the Barrier Reef. I love me sweet Belize. Creole and Garifuna, Mestizo and Maya, living in peace. Sweet Belize, land of the sand and sea, land of the coconut tree. I love me sweet Belize, sweet Belize, land of the Isles and Keys, land of the Barrier Reef. I love me sweet Belize. If I ever had to leave Belize, if I ever had to leave Belize, where would I go? Where would I go? Where would I spread my bed? Where would I lay my head? Nobody know, nobody know. If I ever had to leave me home, no other place I ever roam could be like Belize, be like Belize. Sweet Belize, land of the sand and sea, land of the coconut tree. I love me sweet Belize, sweet Belize, land of the Isles and Keys.
Good morning, Belize. Welcome back to Rise and Shine. And we had a wonderful first segment with two leaders from Child Evangelism Fellowship with materials for kids ministry, whether that's in your church or out of the church, in schools, whatever. But I think the most important takeaway is the importance that we need to place in our values as adults on the children. And so whether that's in the home, in the school, in the church, or life in general for us as a nation. So I want to challenge and encourage all of us that we must pay closer attention. We've got to be more deliberate, more strategic in our efforts, and I'm making sure that there's a positive impact in the children's lives that are around us. And so that was our first segment. We're in our second segment, and I've got my morning co-host with me, Mr. Kerm Timbrell. Kerm, good to see you. Missed you for a week, and so anyways, or actually it stretched into 10 days, right? And
that's becoming the norm.
Yeah. And so anyways, I just want to encourage everybody. We're here. We want to talk about some of these things that are affecting our nation, and and keeping it on the children, at least for a period of time in our discussion here. But the whole thing of the importance that we're prioritizing this area, because Kerm, if kids aren't successfully getting the values imparted into their lives, like something's seriously wrong. And I just want to encourage everybody, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. We've got to be more deliberate. We've got to analyze ourselves and analyze what's happening around in terms of bringing forth that change.
No, of course, Pastor Scott. And good morning, Belize. I feel like I'm still in the Gulf of America coming. Man, it's been some long days. I was in the States and it was so cold.
Yeah.
And the wind was so strong. I was blown away at the fact that, my gosh, I wonder, can my car just be flipped over by a tornado in a moment, because the wind is crazy. Right now the weather patterns in the US, Pastor Scott, is wild. The flights can't land, or it's turbulent, But it kind of paints a picture of maybe even the state of our nation or nations around the world that has become so turbulent because of the lack of right level of involvement of the parents or the leaders in the lives of the children.
That's right.
We have to understand the needs, that these kids have needs, and I wrote down a couple points, Pastor, along the line, because I think this is so important. I was watching the first segment with you guys talking about the kids, and it took me back to a session from GLS where this guy Ryan Leake, he asked the question. I don't know if you remember the session, but he asked the question, and I want to ask Blaze that question this morning. You know, like what is our definition of success?
That's right.
You know, what is our definition? Is it that we own bigger homes and bigger cars and we travel to Asia and Europe and we put it on Facebook? And you know, what will be, Belize, our definition of success? And my wife and I had to grapple with this question years ago. My wife got pregnant, you know, and she was about to give birth to our first child. And I remember, Pastor Scott, we had to have a hard conversation. It was not a normal conversation, but something in my heart.
A strategic conversation.
Yes, you know, something in my heart rose up based on what I was seeing in the media at the time. And it was story after story about children being molested by parents, babysitters, or some family members.
Yes.
Most of the time, family member who are supposed to be trustees, who should have access to these children.
Right.
Right? And I said to myself, and I talked to my wife, and I said, Shelley, I do not want this to be the story for our kids. Our kids are way too valuable. You know, and so we had a discussion around the fact that, you know what, maybe you would you consider resigning from your job? And it was a long conversation, but I am thankful that my wife saw the value in her children. And she decided, it wasn't an overnight decision, you know. It took her a while.
That's right.
But we talked about it, we talked it through. And my wife said, you know what? Yeah, I think it would be the right thing for me to do. Because she could have had this desire to go up the corporate ladder.
Yeah.
You
well,
know?
she was working in immigration.
Yeah.
Right?
She was a very professional
and so
person.
there's a ladder there for you to climb, you know, and then what happens a lot of times is when promotion or opportunity of promotion comes, I know people that have rejected a promotion because they know that where they're at right now in their position, they're at home, right? But then you know what? We're giving you a promotion, and we're promoting you to, you know, regional sales representative, whatever. And thank you, but no thanks. Are you crazy? Did you forget that you have a family? No, actually, my family is the reason why I'm saying no. Because if I become a regional sales rep, I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to have to be away more. And I'm sorry, our kids are small, and they need both of us home. So anyways, I'm very honored to have gotten the promotion, but I need to say I need to pass. And people feel like you're absolutely crazy because you realize how much more money it's not about money. It's about values. It's about home. It's about family.
It's about what's valuable.
Yes. And then
what's valuable,
and then
what's the most valuable.
The way that the system is kind of built these days, it's very difficult to survive or to make it on one income.
Yeah.
The
Quote,
system
unquote.
is kind of built, quote unquote, yes.
Yeah.
And so but then I believe very strongly that then you find some other income generating things, but that can take place within the context of the home and the family. Because if we're juggling our priorities, right, and then which ones are really the most important, some of those things you're going to have to just let drop, right? And if your kids are important, then what we're saying, following through from that first segment, they need to be extremely, extremely important. And so anyways, so then you have to build your priorities, but you use the word, how do we define success?
Yeah. That's where it starts.
I think
that's where the conversation
part
has to start.
Part of our problem though is that most people don't live in that realm of define.
Yeah.
They don't sit down and think through and define, okay, so what are our target goals? You know, what's our purpose? What's our primary things? What are our non-negotiables? We need to identify what are the things that we will not compromise. And this is a firm peg, this is a firm peg, this is a firm peg. Just to throw this in real quickly, I mentioned in the first segment about my wife's mom, my mother-in-law, just passed away at 102 years old, and we've spent the last 9 or 10 months bouncing back and forth between Canada and Belize, and part of the reason why is because God spoke to my wife and I from before we were married. We were engaged, and we were having a talk one day about our family. What do we want our family to be like? What do we want our home, not our house, our home? What do we want our home to be like? And we set some things before the Lord that day. But one of the things that we set was that 3 weeks would be emergency max. 2 weeks would be normal max of time away from each other, and 3 weeks would be emergency max. Well, we've been in an emergency situation with, Cheryl's mom that has needed that care, and we were committed that we as a family were going to provide that. We're not going to allow our nursing home or somebody else, just a paid employee to provide that. We will provide that. But what that meant, Kerm, is that when Cheryl would go up, she'd be up there for 3 weeks. I need to jump on a plane and be up, because we set this policy. I would actually say God set this policy for us. But it came because we were needing to define what do we see as success for our marriage, for our family, honoring our parents, as they get older. And so, like I told Cheryl, I said, you are on a mission. You got to keep focused on your mission. And Cheryl would tell me, we literally would talk multiple times every day. And when we were separated, and then I just told her, you have to remember, you are on a mission. And my wife would tell me, thank you for continuing to remind me, Scott. I need that, because, it feels like I'm in a completely different world, And so anyways, I want to challenge everybody. You have to think along these lines. You have to, how do you define, what are your target goals? What do you want? A lot of people put money up there at the top, and I just want to say, I think that money is important, but it's not the most important. There's other things that are more important, but part of the reason why I think that things get messed up is because we're not thinking this way. Right? And then that's why that teaching for GLS to challenge, how do you define success?
Pastor Scott, I think we're living in a time where there's so much, not that it has never been in the past, there's so much societal pressure to structure your family based upon a North American model. And I think now people are realizing that this is failing, because when you look in Belize City, part of the American dream is what have our country the way it is today.
Right.
People left what? What did they leave behind? Their children. And they migrated to the US. And, it took me some time to learn about the areas where they went that were troubled areas. And so, of course, what did they learn? Crime. But we're talking this morning about our definition of success. And I believe, Pastor Scott, every generation will have to answer this question. Every generation, what is your definition? Like what I was saying earlier, my wife and I, we made a decision to put our kids first, to prioritize our kids. Why? We had our wife factor, and it was because we did not want to ever have to look in the eyes of our children and says, or when they would come and say, Dad, somebody molested me when I was a kid and I didn't want to talk to you about it. No. We're not about to give anybody that opportunity. And so what did we do? We put our kids first. So my wife became the nanny. How better than that can it be? And I was thinking just recently, Pastor Scott, about my kids, and just been in a place of gratitude, because we made some tough choices. And not that it wasn't hard for a portion of it, because we went from 2 salaries to 1, But God came through, the God factor came in for us, right? And now, when I look in the life of my kids, I was just in a state with my daughter. And everybody tells me, man, your daughter is so sweet. She's so amazing. But for me, what was important was that my daughter build a life of faith. Because in the United States, let's be serious. This universities there, they have this progressive movement doctrine that they're trying to put in the lives of all these kids. You know, and it's so strong.
Progressively warped.
Right. It's a warped, chaotic way for us to redefine society. And we see it trying to trickle into beliefs as well, right? But, you know, and I said no. So we were careful to pick which university our daughter would go. And we picked a faith-based university. And I'll tell you, when I look at my daughter today, I'm like so thankful. We invested in her. We're not dead. We all ate. She's in university.
That's right.
So she must be doing good, right? But Pastor Scott,
God has provided.
Of course.
This is a very important point. God has provided because you put your values first. You put principle and truth first. You put God first. You put family first. You put covering your children, you know, and you get those things first, and then everything else falls in line, right? And there's no question. Sometimes it's tough. It's tough, but I'm thankful for the tough times. I really am, because those are the places where we grow. If we're not having to depend upon God, I would say you better watch out, right? And so part of the reason why God kept bigging up David for thousands of years, King David was known as a man after God's own heart. But you look at all the things that David went through and the desperation, you know, and so many times if we're not in that place of needing God, then many times, the times when David got himself in trouble was when he kind of pulled back, right? Start to chill and relax. That's when he got himself in trouble. I would say it's better to be in that place of desperation before God, and where you see God come through, but you know that you're living right there, right? But I just want to say that for you guys, Cheryl and I have seen the same exact thing. You put God first, you put those godly values first, those godly priorities, your marriage, your family, your children. Those are the most important things, and everything else will follow behind.
So again, we're posing the question, what is our definition of success? I believe I wasn't here. I would have loved to be here to listen to a national budget debate. But what portion of our debate was geared towards family development and children?
That's
right? What portion of it? Because, you know, you could have all education, you know. You could go to the best universities. I have been saying, Pastor Scott, that we have more PhDs in our country today than we've ever had. Yet the crime situation is the worst it has ever been in the face of people with all of these doctorate and PhD degrees. Why? It's telling us something. There's a message in there. And if we don't build the right character, like what our parents passed on to us so wonderfully, you know, they taught us boundaries. They taught us integrity. Yeah. You know? Work. Right? The power of your last name. You know, I remember this guy, Richard Montalvo, he's the guy who came up with the free-to tip, right? The hot Cheeto, right? Yes. And he was saying when he went to do his job as a janitor that he says this is what his mom told him, a very poor family, poor Mexican migrants. He was a janitor. He was a janitor. And he said, Richard, he says, it's not about the job you do, it's about your last name. He says, when you mop the floor, Richard, think about your family name. And so you should do that job with excellence because of your family name. You know, and that's character. That's integrity. That's excellence, you know. There was a mom, and he says his mom was his biggest leader. She was the one who mentored and trained. And so I'm thankful our parents taught us what they did, Pastor Scott. But when we look at society today, what are we building? Where are we? How are we defining success? Are we more peaceful as a society? Yeah. Things should be better. Right? It should be better. But then how do you define better? That's right. So that's why we're saying
this thing about your definition. And so you got to press pause and sit down with a notebook. It could even just be an exercise book. But when we're talking about what's your definition, how do you define success, right? You need to sit down and write some of those things down. Write them down on a piece of paper. You might even want to write it down or get it printed on a piece of paper and stick it up on your wall to where you keep that vision before you, right? And it goes to the very core of what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of family do you want to have? You know, what kind of values? What do you want
society?
What do you want your reputation to be, right? And so anyways, we're just encouraging, you know, in the follow through of the conversation this morning about children and placing the value on the children, and the fact that we're looking at 25%, I think was the statistic. 25%. 14 and under, we're looking at 25%, you know, of our nation being children, and so you don't delegate the raising of your children to somebody else. That's why you guys made the change that you did.
Yes, of course.
You don't delegate the raising of your children. Only you can be the parent. And so anyways, I want to encourage everybody towards values, and so we need to start to wind down. You got anything else you want to get off your chest?
I have a lot of stuff because I wrote notes, and this was a good topic, you know. But my next question is this for the nation and the government. If we grow our economic condition, if I become more prosperous because I have a job, my wife have a job, we're making all this money, right? But don't grow our people's character, then is that success?
That's right.
See, what you were talking about earlier is being proactive versus reactive. When we look at society today, a police officer was just shot in the line of duty.
That's right.
Right? Which is total chaos.
That's right.
That is a major issue.
I said, Kern, the BDF should have been called in.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
This is craziness.
They needed to send a strong message that we don't accept this kind of stuff. This is non-acceptable. Right? Or unacceptable, sorry. And so, he was just shot in the line of duty. Why? Because people were squatting for land. It's a culture that's creeping in. And unfortunately, some of our leaders have been endorsing this type of thing. People come in the country, they squat on the land, and next thing you know, they go to the area rep and they not only get a land paper, they have a passport. They get nationality. You are promoted to exemplify a life of chaos.
That's right.
Because I want to be in power.
That's right.
I want to get a vote. So what we are seeing today, Pastor Scott, is...
But actually they're thieving land.
Of course they are.
Right?
Of course they are.
And then sometimes they're even building a house, cement house on somebody else's land.
That's right.
And you to take away my livelihood, it's like, excuse me, you built your livelihood
on chaos.
On somebody else's property, you know.
Yeah. So if we are growing our economic situation, growing our economy, right? But don't grow our people's character.
That's right.
Is that success? You see, what we're talking about this morning is a legacy. What kind of legacy will you leave? Will you be a reactive person or a proactive person? See? And that's what our leaders need to be looking at, our governmental leaders. What kind of society do I want to carve? You know, some people don't like Donald Trump, and it's okay. We're not going to put you, we're not going to cancel you.
Some people didn't like Joe Biden.
Right? We're not going to cancel you because you don't like Donald Trump. But when you look at some of the things he's doing, I heard he had a meeting in the region. I heard this on US News. 12 leaders from the Caribbean, Pastor Scott. And they are going to tackle the drug and the cartel situation. I said, kudos. Which other leader in the past 40 years have you seen done that?
That's right.
Right? This man is setting a new precedent.
And yet people
right?
to rail up.
People
to rail up.
Yeah.
They defend the drug industry, and I'm not talking about pharmaceuticals. We're talking about illegal drugs, right? They're to defend these people and this and that, and because, anyways, Lord have mercy.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
But you know what it is, though, Kerm? It's the blurring of the lines on values. Right? And then what happens is when you start to shift from absolutes over to this kind of relative thing where you blur the lines, then everything starts to become very, very confused. And I'm very concerned, even as we're talking about with children, I'm very concerned about the message that's being sent to children with this kind of
you're not valuable.
What I would call
that's the message.
Foolishness.
Yes. Yeah, you're not valuable.
And it's bad enough. It's bad enough with the TikTok generation, of young people and kids that don't want to work because they want to spend their whole day, scrolling on their phone or playing games or whatever. Can I share with you something that I saw recently here?
Absolutely.
This is so powerful. This guy was a scientist and analyst, and he was saying that kids in the United States right now are performing lower than other nations, and when it started to plummet was and I'm not just talking about cell phone, but screens in general, computers, everything. When they started to shift over to using screens for education, right? And when you think about this, let's say, I'm not sure if you've ever read, a good story, a good novel. I really loved dog stories when I was a kid, right? And so time to do a book report, I would always pick a dog story, a boy and his dog type thing, right? And I still love dogs. But all of that just to say, in order to write a book, you have to use descriptive words. You have to be intelligent and intellectual to write a book. But then when somebody's reading the book, it's creating a picture in your imagination. Because of the descriptive words, it's creating a picture, right? And what happens is somebody's imagination, somebody's brain is being engaged. When you sit and watch a video, it's all pre-prepared for you. Your brain goes into chill mode. Your brain starts turning into jelly, right? Because it's not actually being utilized. And what this guy was saying is, in the United States, the level of comprehension has dropped. And he said, we have more resources than any place else in the world, but the level of comprehension has dropped since the advent of utilizing technology for learning. And I think what it means is, particularly in those early years where you're laying those foundations, old school, the reading of books, the creating of when your imagination is being stretched in creating those pictures, that translates over to your imagination in business later on when you're an adult. Creative ways to think of new ways to do something. But what's happening is people just get in this one directional flow where their mind goes on chill, right? And we're going to see the results of that. We're going to see the negative results of that. Yes.
We're going to react when the society begins to collapse, because there's a cascade of chaos.
There's more drugs, there's more violence, there's more murders, which brings us right up to 2026, right where we're at, folks. And so anyways, we're just raising a flag saying, how do we get things back? It starts in our own hearts, how you define. So anyways, we need to wrap up.
Yeah, so my closing remark is this morning. My heart has been burdened for the nation. We love Belize, all of us, you do, we do. And when you look at what's taking place, I think we're losing ground. And I think it's because we've had a wrong focus. We're in the professional capacity, many of us. Many women today are working, and some of the women, you can't tell them anything about their work. They get angry. It's like, don't talk to me about that. But when you abandon what's valuable, that like you let go the bone and you grab the shadow. And then you will become a reactive person, because when you look down the road now, when your kids don't grow up, and you look at what their lives have become, and the stories that they have to tell about the pain and suffering because you weren't there for them. I wasn't there for them. We weren't there for them. You know what happens? We become regretful. That, man, look at me picnic. No. Everything happens on an intentional basis. And so we have to be a proactive community and a society where we say, you know what do I want to produce in this nation for the next 20 years? And then we built it. But right now, Pastor Scott, our focus is wrong, and that's why we see society collapsing. There's so many white-collar crimes. People get in their necktie and thief the money. corruption, even we see it in our security forces. Why? Because the character was not formed by the parents.
Yeah.
Because that is where it should really happen first. And then society help to put the others together. And I think that it's time for us as a society to ask the question, as a government, if we build an economy strong, if you got a bigger car, you drive BMW, and you travel all over the world and put it on Facebook, right? And you have a bigger house, but your kids' lives are collapsing because they don't have a proper identity. They don't know who they are. They want to kill. They want to rob. They want to molest. They want to rape. Because we, as leaders, never understood really what is the definition of success. And we did not invest enough in the right place and the right people. And I'm just thinking that when we watch the news, we can't say that what happened to Belize.
That's right.
We have to know that this is what's happening to our country because of these things that we did not do.
That's right.
And so it points the question, what is your definition of success, Belize, and how do you want the next 20 years to look? That will be our legacy.
Yeah.
It will be our legacy.
Very good. My closing comments here, Kerm. I saw a news story about somebody that plays American football. He not necessarily a superstar. I'd never heard of him before, but I don't even watch American football these days. Anyways, I'm offended by how much money these guys make, running around chasing after a ball and slamming their bodies into each other. This guy was, you know. Anyways, I don't want to talk about it. The good thing about it, listen to me carefully. He decided to retire early. His contract had, I think, 2 more years. He decided to retire early. And here's what he said. I need more time with my family. And he said, I want everybody to know I could have never done this without my amazing wife. She is the glue that holds everything all. So here's this guy, you know, who making multi-millions, running around chasing a ball and throwing his body to crash into other people. But anyways, it's called sports. But he's walking away from that because he realized I need more time with my family. And then right there in front of God and everyone, bigs up his wife, right? And then the other thing, Oscars the other night. Me no watch Oscars. I know somebody named Oscar, but I watch Oscars, right? And so, anyways, but I caught a news flash about this. Well, a lady got an award for movie, right? And she stands up and with tears and says, I want to thank my amazing and wonderful husband because I could not have done this without him. And she looked him right in the eyes, babe, I love you with all of my heart. And to our little daughter, you know, that he was holding, to our little daughter who doesn't even know what's going on right now, right? Like she said, I'm just so looking forward to the rest of our lives, you know, together. And I thought, wow. But what was coming to my mind, you know, when you get into this progressive thing, Hollywood and movies and the stars and the money and all of this progressive stuff that they're all pushing, and anti-men and you know, feminism and all these different kind of things. Some of those people in that room would have loved to just go beat down that lady for saying what she said. I want to thank my wonderful husband because I couldn't have done this without him and my child. And I'm looking forward to our other children. And it's like some people want to rise up and go buck somebody like that, right? Because
cancel culture.
Yes, and yet the truth of the matter is, it's the way that God has made it to be. So here, I'm not sure what the husband does, but here's the woman who's successful, but she's giving all the credit to the husband, but they're in this thing together. The guy that retired early, I would imagine, husband and wife sat down, the kids are all in bed, they're needing to have a heart-to-heart talk, and he said, you know what, I think I'm going to retire early, and because we're in a different place of need. I need to be here more.
That's so good.
You know what I'm saying?
It's meeting the needs.
Yes.
Whether two person
yes,
work or not,
yes,
you know,
yes.
you
And
have
so-
to meet the needs.
And yet,
Yeah.
so how many other people are saying, listen, I'm making hundreds of millions, but I want to make hundreds of billions. And so they'll continue to neglect this and go farther.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody says, you know what, we're in very good shape. I am retiring early because I need to be home with my family. I want more time with my wife. I want more time with my kids. All we're saying is make sure that you identify the most important things in life. And then we guard and we protect those things. They're called values. They're called principles. That's why every 3 weeks I would have to get on a plane and go up to Canada to go up and be with my wife, because we had a policy that we set. And why have a policy if you're not going to follow it? And so let's be that kind of people. How do you define what success is going to look like in your life? Please write it down on a piece of paper, right? And like I said, if you want, you can print it on a piece of paper and stick it on the wall to where you keep that vision in front of you. Please make sure God is way up there at the top, honoring Him, pleasing Him, making sure that we're right in the center of His will. Carm, great to be
Yes.
together with you.
Yes, sir.
Belize, great to be together with you. It's always an honor. It's always a privilege. And we ask that you would just listen carefully and take these things to heart, because what we're pushing for is a better Belize, a more fruitful Belize. And we're not to talk about money. We're to talk about our families, our children, building a lasting future.
Strong, healthy society.
That's right, exactly right. So,
Safe.
anyways,
That's right.
Belize, God bless. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you tomorrow morning.
Sweet Belize, land of the sand and sea, land of the coconut tree. I love me sweet Belize. Sweet Belize, land of the islands and keys, land of the barrier reef. I love me sweet